Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone. Welcome in on a Thursday morning. We're back after taking the holiday yesterday. Tuesday we were talking with Riley Jensen. And, it's interesting to talk to him about quarterback play because he played quarterback and he's now a mental performance coach. But it's also interesting to talk to him about other sports where, especially golf, where it's a one-on-one battle and then it's a one-on-none battle. The one-on-one is just you versus your mind. And what is Rory McIlroy going through, and what's it going to look like when we see him again at the Open Championship next month? Here's Riley Jensen with PK and I. A few phone issues with Riley, but he's got some interesting takes on Rory and what he's got to do to get back at the Open Championship and maybe win that fifth major. Here's Riley with PK and I. Riley, good morning.
Good morning, fellas. What's happening?
Well, normally, and we will talk to you about football, but we're going to start with you with golf this morning. And I know you work with athletes in a lot of sports. You've worked with multiple local schools, and so they all sponsor a wide range of sports. But it is a little different when you're talking to someone in a team sport and there's a defense. Golfers play an individual sport, and there is no defense, so it's just up to you to hit that putt or hit that drive when you're ready, and if it goes wrong, well, it's on you. So if you were working with Rory McIlroy, and he's made 496 putts of 4 feet or less in a row, and then he misses 2 right at the end of the U.S. Open and lose by 1, how would you work with rebuilding somebody after that?
Well, unfortunately, I think Rory is actually pretty mentally tough. It's obviously a devastating turn of events for him. He's been really hard to get back to win a major, and I think that might have been part of what the pressure was. I think, in my experience working with golfers that are on the PGA Tour, on the LPGA Tour, and the Korn Ferry Tour, I think the thing that's a little bit different than just you and I going out and golfing and having a little bit of fun is there's just hundreds of thousands of dollars on each one of these putts. And if you're not in the right mindset, it can be really, really difficult to even make a 3-foot putt. And you could, on hole 16, it was hard to watch. It was hard to watch. He was, he's been so good this year. I think if I read the stats correctly, he's led all of the PGA in putts under 3 feet, 4 feet for the whole year. And then he missed, obviously, 2 big ones. And everyone's going to call that a choke. But I think the thing that people don't understand about golf is you walk around a course for 4.5 hours, and the actual amount of time that you golf is between 5 and 6.5 minutes. And that's if you count, the pre-cut. So there's so much time to think, and there's so much time to pull yourself into the future, pull yourself into the past, and being present is really, really difficult in pressure situations. And so what I always try to do with golfers is he's hit 1 million of these putts. He knows how to putt. It's not he doesn't know how to drive, chip, putt, all those things. He's one of the best golfers that's ever been alive. Is you really try and simplify and occupy the brain with 1 or 2 simple things, such as line and pace, right? Instead of the 25 to 100 things that have to go right to hit a putt. 1 or 2 things so that your mind has enough to munch on, and then you let your body go into automatic mode instead of overthinking mode. And clearly, I can't remember now, I'm getting – this might be CTE from when I played 16th or the 18th. One of them looked real wonky to me. The other one looked normal. It was just a miss. I know that he's had some things that really, really nice. Under some difficult things going on for him, and I'm just pulling for working with him. I'd probably throw out all the science and just sit with him and talk.
Riley, you're really breaking up. We can't follow it here, so we're gonna have Jake give you a call back, see if we can get a better connection here.
I'm listening to the Golf Channel driving in this morning, and they're interviewing Brad Faxon, and they ask him about, well, you just forget about it and move on. He said, I don't think you forget about it. I think you remember it. You don't let it paralyze you and haunt you, but you remember what you did, what you didn't do, and how you can improve upon it.
Sounds like the Celtics postgame when Jaylen Brown was talking about we didn't skip steps. We had a lot of hard losses, but they made us tougher, and this is why we're sitting here right now. So you can't just flush it away.
But the difference here is Rory McIlroy should be in the prime. Those guys built. They were young.
They were young, and they were going through a natural part of the process.
Right. And so with Riley, my thought is, do you remember this stuff or do you flush it away? Because I think you remember it and try to build upon it. But maybe not.
Is that true, Riley?
I think there's benefit in both. I think in dwelling too long on the past, that can be really, really difficult and problematic. I think you quickly, and maybe you spend a couple of days assessing what happened, and then you move back into the present moment. If you spend too much time in the past, no amount of guilt, no amount of anger, no amount of shame can ever change the past. And if you spend too much in the future, no amount of anxiety or stress or nerve can change the future. This is the key, and I know it's real kitschy, and I know it's the real key phrase lately to really focus on the moment. But you really got to get into the present moment and really just be where your feet are. The trick is teaching people tools how to do that. Teaching people tools how to stay in the moment and how to be just a little bit more dialed in to that present moment. But, yeah, he's going to have to spend some time going through what happened, but you can't dwell on it. Things like this situation, you have to realize you made a mistake. It's not that you are a mistake. You made a mistake. And that's where you have to differentiate, and look, all the great ones have gone through some sort of difficulty, some sort of adversity in their career. It's what they do after a moment like this that makes them heroes.
See, actually, though, in my literal case, my parents told me I was a mistake.
Stunned silence. You floored him.
I wasn't a mistake. I was a surprise. That was a miracle.
There you go.
Because she went through some real difficult stuff about 7-8 years prior involving a pregnancy in which there was a death and all that stuff, and was said you couldn't, that would be it.
You're not going to have another kid.
And then here I come.
Here comes Patrick Kinahan.
And because I was a month early, I was in the hospital for a week, and I was brought home, of all the days to be brought home, December 24th, and placed under the Christmas tree. I had no chance to live up to that, and I haven't.
Oh, man.
They might as well have built a friggin' manger. And I have been trying to live up to that forever and have failed. Have not been able to do that.
Running against my better judgment, I have a football question for you. Not that I think you can't answer it. I just don't know if we'll hear you when you do answer it.
But, I'm sorry.
No, sorry. It's fine.
I'll answer it if that's the case.
Hey, PK,
Yeah.
PK, real quick. I'm 18 years older than my youngest brother. My brother's 15 years older. And they always asked my mom, they said, are you going to tell him that he was a mistake? And she said, well, I told the other two they were. What's the big deal?
Get over it.
Get over it. It's not that big a deal. It's about what you do when you get drafted. It's about what you do when you get picked.
Or in this case, born.
Right. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah, gotcha.
It's about what you do with your opportunity.
My question is about Cougar football. There are many years that we go into the season, we know the Cougar quarterback is, and he's built up and he's hyped up, and sometimes they live up to the hype, and sometimes they don't. And certainly they've had two quarterbacks who gave them 3 really good years as the starter there, and that was great. And now this year, there's a JC guy who was 0-4 last year. There's a guy coming in who has won a Big 12 title but hasn't played in a while and is coming off a major shoulder injury. There's a transfer from Utah State. There's another young guy. I mean, any of them might pull it off, but it's not obvious who the person is going to be. And there's the argument that they're going to have a better team around them. So that's going to be different than last year. So it's apples and oranges comparing the two. What's your level of confidence? Where do you see this going? Who do you believe in? How do you think this plays out?
Well, I remember the late and great Lamell Edwards used to say when there's a quarterback controversy, it's usually because you don't have a quarterback.
Oops.
But here's the two things that I think are really, really important to understand. I do think that the offensive line will be much improved. I think that'll take a little bit of pressure off the quarterback. It has to improve for the quarterback to play better. And I'm just really interested to see, I thought the late move after spring ball, bringing in the Utah State transfer,
McKay Hillstead,
is a really interesting move because I don't think you typically see that move unless you don't feel real great about spring ball. Now, I'm not going on inside sources. I'm just trying to read the tea leaves here, but I've got a feeling that they don't feel great about what was going on in spring ball, and so they need to make another move. I would be very surprised that if not at the first of the season, that sometime through the season, McKay Hillstead is the guy at BYU. Now, McKay is an incredible athlete. He's very fun to watch. When you see him on the field, he's very small. Like, you're going to look at him and go, wow, that's a small quarterback. Now, he's going to excite you with some plays. He's going to excite you with his arm. He's going to excite you with his moxie. But my question still remains with McKay is, can he play and make it through without getting hurt? That's going to be really, really important. Now, if this offensive line is improved like I think they will be, maybe that question becomes moot because he's going to be protected and he's going to be able to make plays with both his feet and his hands, or with his arm. But it's going to be interesting that quarterback position is going to be super vital to what happens in the Big 12 this fall for BYU.
Do you think someone who comes into the program officially not till training camp, and I realize they got summer workouts informally on their own before then, but can someone who just arrives as far as the team concept, the practice in August, be the starting quarterback in game one?
I think that's a tall ask. I definitely think that's hard. That's why when I'm saying that I think he'll be the man at BYU, it's because I think it'll take a little bit of time. The one advantage that he has is, he's a local kid. There's definitely going to be players on the team that he's played with that are going to be able to attest to what a good player he is, what a good person he is, what type of a leader he is. But it does take time. You still have to learn the playbook. You still have to learn the timing of a different offense. And as much as we, are trying to plug and play with quarterbacks, there's still just so much timing that goes into the passing game. Such as a 10-yard speed out. If your foot isn't hitting the ground and letting go of the ball at the right time, if you're throwing a seam route at 16 to 18 yards and you're not getting rid of the ball at the right time, it can be very difficult. And every receiver runs those routes a little bit different. So there is some timing that needs to take place this summer and during fall camp for him to be able to come in and play effectively that the other quarterbacks will have an advantage on.
When you talk about the O-line being better, And about that impacting the quarterback, is that going to impact the run game as well? Because pass blocking and run blocking, two different things. Some groups are good at both, but some groups are only good at one or the other.
Well, to me, it's always important that they have an identity. So, back in the Lavelle Edwards days, it was a team that could really pass block well, and then they would set up the run with the pass. And then there were some other teams when Harvey Unger was playing where it was a real run-heavy team, and they would set up the pass with the run. I think, in my opinion, you got to make sure you have an identity and that you're good at one or the other, and then you can always set up the other and give your offensive line a good opportunity to play really, really good football if they have an identity and they're good at one of them. Now, there's a lot of jockeying going on. There's a lot of new linemen that are brought in. There was a lot of new linemen brought in last year. A whole bunch of guys battling for a lot of positions, but what will be interesting, and I think if you're a BYU fan, what you have to watch closely is you have to watch the right guard position. See who wins that right guard position, because I think that's the one that's the most open for the newest guy to make an impact. And I know they've been moving a lot of different offensive linemen around in different places, but if you look at that right guard position, see who he is, see if he's making good plays, that could be the real key. That could be the keystone to that offensive line this year.
There's Riley Jensen. When we come back, Real Salt Lake does it again. They win on the road in Kansas City, a wild 4-3 victory. A lot of stuff went right. A lot of stuff went wrong. Diego Luna had a couple of great assists. You'll hear from him. Gavin Beavers, the teenage goalkeeper, comes up with a win. And Pablo Mastroeni on his 50th career victory as RSL's head coach. That's all next. Stay with us. Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone. Welcome in. RSL won last night in Kansas City 4-3, a place they've had a lot of success. Their last 11 regular season games there, 5 wins, 2 losses, and they've split the points 4 times. They scored 4 goals. They gave up 3. The game should have been over at 3-1. It should have been over at 4-2. But no, they gave up a goal in the 95th minute, and Kansas City hit the post in the 96th. It was a wild game. Not just the 7 goals, but Gavin Beavers saved a penalty. Johnny Russell had a chance in the first half, and Beavers turned him away. And there were so many things that happened. And somehow RSL got out of there with a win and all 3 points. And after the win, Diego Luna spoke. He had a couple of great assists to get things rolling for RSL. Here is Diego Luna.
This game in general kind of had obviously there were a lot of goals scored, had kind of a faster tempo to it. Do you prefer games like this where you kind of feel a little more free and there's more transition play?
No, we don't want that, right? We don't want a tennis match where it's just back and forth, and us just running. We're a type of team that wants to control the game, and we like the ball. And then, of course, our reactions and stuff are top tier. So, that's what we want, but we don't want to have this transition game and just back and forth. And I think you saw, that's not the type of game we want. And we can still do it, and we get 3 points, but that's not, we're not proud of that. That's not what we want to do.
And then positionally, you were playing a little more centrally tonight, I believe. Was that a different experience at all for you?
Yeah, I think it was just kind of playing on the right 10 and up top a little bit in the press side. But I think it was just a little bit different because I've been used to playing on the left for a good amount of time, and I like to play the 10, and I would say I'm natural at 10, but it was kind of different to hop back in that position after playing on the left for so long.
Gotcha. And then from a team perspective, I know Pablo said you guys don't talk about streaks, but you guys have gone 15 without a loss at this point in the season. Ties the second best streak in MLS history. I was wondering if you could just maybe talk about what you feel like has been special about this group over the last couple of months that's allowed you to reach this point.
Yeah, I think we don't really talk about that. Yeah, it's right. I think we're just taking one game by day. I think it's just like whatever game we coming up, we focus on that game. We have our game plan. We go into that game with belief. We go into that game with the hard work, with the grit that we have, and I think we just do. Our mentality just shows, right? Games like this, it was very hard physically. The weather was hard, very humid, very hot. But we don't make excuses. We fight through everything, and I think that's just the team, and that's just the guys we have in the locker room, and that's just everybody. The subs that come in, the guys that start, rotations, everybody's on the same page, and we're gonna just continue to look forward to doing that more often and more.
Uh, One more for me real quick. I noticed on the broadcast they mentioned that, how young this group is. I think it was like the sixth youngest in MLS or something. And especially tonight with you, Andreas, and then Fidel, kind of up there in the attack. What's it been like, I guess, developing your game with a bunch of other kind of younger guys that are in a
Yeah,
similar position?
I think it was pretty cool, right? Yeah, we had our four guys up top. Three of them were, U23s. And then we got Ojeda in the midfield, Emeka, all young guys. And I think it's just cool to show that, it's not the age, it's just you work hard, you get your chance and we can perform. And, we get the results with anyone who's coming onto the field. And whether the subs come in, whether we have a rotation, starters, doesn't matter. I think everybody's doing their job, and that's what makes teams at the top.
Diego Luna's still only 20 years old. But he thinks the next guy's pretty young. That'd be the goalkeeper, Gavin Beavers, who's 19. 21-year-old Andres Gomez scored twice and had an assist. There were some young guys playing well. Beavers really couldn't do much about the 3 goals. He did save the penalty, had a couple other big saves as well. That's his 5th start in MLS games this year. He's got 3 wins, a loss, and a draw. They've taken 10 points in those 5 games. Here's Gavin Beavers after the 4-3 win in Kansas City.
I overheard that little bit from Trey on the penalty. Can you just kind of take us through that moment and how you were able to stop it?
Yeah, no, we obviously have we've watched PKs before the game and go through the whole scout of everybody. I didn't know if it was going to be Tommy or if it was going to be him, Russell to take it. But went over to my water bottle, went to look at it, and then Russell actually came over and was like, "Hey, can I get a sip of your water?" And then I was like, "Oh," I said yes, and I was like, I shouldn't have said yes because I realized that all the PKs are sitting on the water bottle. So then I was like, I don't think he's going to switch it up. He's hit 13 the same direction. I think I'm just going to go at the same spot, and he ended up hitting the same way and, got a good push and ended up making the save. So, yeah, it's definitely cool.
Yeah, congrats on that. And then on the night in general, you had 8 saves. Pablo, which is in here talking about how you kind of have a knack for just getting those big saves. What is it about, I guess, your ability to do that? How have you gotten to that point? And what was it like tonight getting those 8 saves?
Yeah, no, I think, I like a good strength of mine, is trying to be a match winner at the end of the day, and go out there and do what I can for the team. I think Mirza and Zach and Tomas, the whole goalkeeper group, we all prepare each other the right way and we all feel ready to go. But yeah, no, I appreciate that from Pablo. And I think, that is something that is a strength of my game and just getting in the right spots at the end of the day. So.
Awesome. And then Pablo mentioned that you guys don't really talk about streaks as a team, but I thought I'd let you know. So 15 unbeaten ties the second best in MLS history as far as a streak without a loss. I guess, how do you kind of put that in context, and can you talk about what's been special about these couple months for you guys?
Yeah, no, I think, obviously we don't talk about that stuff. I think we're just going out there to do the same thing every game, and have the same agenda, and play the way that we know how to play. We have high expectations for ourselves this year. We expect to go out there and win and dominate and, perform well. And I think, throughout this last month and a half, we've had, some games that, haven't gone our way to start out, but we've just grinded it out. And like I said before, in another one, like we're all dogs. I think at the end of the day, we're going to hustle for each other. We're a big family, we all want the same thing. We're all striving towards the same goal. So I think that, it doesn't change game to game. It's just, everybody's ready to step up and do their job.
All right, there are the players. Now here's the head coach, Pablo Mastroeni, asked about the club record 15-game unbeaten streak, which is tied for second in MLS history. The record's 19, set by Dallas. And also, Pablo got his 50th win as RSL's head coach. Here's Pablo after the match.
Got a couple kind of bigger picture questions for you. You guys have gone 15 unbeaten now at this point, ties the second best in MLS history. And you were actually part of one of those teams, I believe, 2016 in Colorado. Going 15 unbeaten. So I guess maybe if you could just kind of reflect maybe a bit on this streak and maybe how it compares to other great moments in your career?
Um, to be honest, Caleb, I had no idea. And I think it's just, and I think I was the same way as a player. There's no time to really be excited about anything because the job isn't done. You know what I mean? And so, I think in terms of the streak, I think it's really about being really process oriented and thinking about the kind of team we want to be, what that looks like in the future, and then working towards that vision every single day. And it's so interesting as far as streaks. I mean, you need a lot of fortune. You need games like tonight where I don't think we were at our best in many of the phases, although maybe the attack and transition phase we were quite good. But you still find ways to get results, and that's really a testament to the mentality of the group. Going to Canada, coming home for a day and a half, and then coming here to Kansas City, and I mean this place was an oven. And so I think it's really a testament to the mental fortitude of the group to keep doing it. And again, we don't talk about the streak. It's not important for us as much as it is getting better every game. And so, but if you try to get better every game and you look at yourself honestly and reflect, I think you end up in situations like this. So again, I think it has a lot to do with the processes that we put together as a team that allows us to be where we're at. But I tell you what, that was a crazy game. And I think we gotta recover quickly from this, from the travels, from the heat, and really put our best foot forward against a really good LA Galaxy team at home in front of our fans, and really finish this week off with a bang.
Yeah, you mentioned the transition scoring there. After going, having the 0-0 draw over the weekend, you guys come out and score 4, get the win. It was actually your 50th win with the team, so congrats on that. But I guess, yeah, like maybe talk a little bit more about that, scoring 4 after scoring 0.
Yeah, I think every team poses different challenges. I think in Montreal, they got a lot of numbers behind the ball, gave us a lot of possession, and we just weren't incisive with it. I felt this game was really interesting because when we broke a line or two, it was, a 4v3 or a 5v4 to goal. And typically, if we don't have those kind of looks, once we break a line, we still want to go to the goal, but then we want to set up our offense as well. And but the way the game unfolded was their defensive transition wasn't as good as our attacking transition, so we had numbers up, and so it'd be crazy not to go to goal. And so we found ourselves with better opportunities than we did in Montreal. And then the one thing is, because of the heat, we just couldn't get a lot of pressure on the ball. And so we ended up falling into a lower block because of that. And those are some things that we'll look at in lieu of the game against LA. But yeah, this was a different game than the previous one. The tactics from Montreal were different than Kansas City, the players. And so I'm just grateful that the guys really took advantage of those moments in transition to put 4 goals in the back of the net.
Awesome. And then lastly, just wanted to ask you about the defense real quick. Gavin comes back in, gets 8 saves, but then you have Brian Vera gets a yellow, so he won't be available on Saturday. I guess maybe just some general thoughts on that back line tonight.
Yeah, I think for the most part, they did a decent job in defending, right? Because again, when you're away from home and you have a lead, teams are going to throw numbers forward, and they got the crowd and they got momentum, and I think for the most part we defended well. I think Gavin had a great game. Kept us in the game quite a few times, made some big saves. I mean, he's just got a knack of pulling balls out of the net, and he did a great job. And then again, losing Vera obviously isn't ideal, especially with Glad and Marcelo Silva and Holt. But I think it's never been an issue. We don't talk about players not being available. We talk about the next guy stepping up and having the right mindset to come in and contribute. And what the guy said after the game was, our performance wasn't the greatest, but our mentality was super strong. And so the expectation is whoever comes in to spell Vera will definitely give his best to keep things ticking.
There's RSL head coach Pablo Mastroeni now right back at it. They play the Galaxy at home Saturday night, and the Galaxy won. They beat New York City FC. The Galaxy are tied for second with LAFC, and the two LA teams are both 3 points behind RSL. So the Galaxy are coming in here Saturday night, knowing if they win, they move into a tie for first place. RSL and the Galaxy played to a 2-2 draw in LA earlier this year. It's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. RSL is going to have a makeshift lineup. Both teams will, 3 games in 8 days. But Justin Glad is hurt. Brian Vera is suspended for yellow card accumulation because he got another yellow card last night. Marcelo Silva's hurt. Holt's hurt. When the season started, those were their top 4 center backs. So now what? The right back, Bodie Hidalgo, could move inside. The left back, Brian Oviedo, could move inside. Philip Quinton, who they acquired from Columbus midseason, he could get another start. He started the Kansas City game, so he may not be the freshest of legs. But then Oviedo and Hidalgo played there too, so, everybody's a little tired at this point. 2 of those 3 guys will start, and they will try to make do Saturday night against the LA Galaxy. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're talking NBA with Tim LaComb. Stay with us. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Tim LaComb joined us Tuesday in the wake of Boston winning the NBA title on Monday. And I'm always intrigued watching the playoffs, watching the finals. What do the Jazz need to do? How is the league evolving? What is the best path forward, the best strategy for them as they try to build and get good again? Here is Tim LaComb answering many of those questions with PK and I. Tim, good morning.
Good morning. We actually used to play that one back in basically our first time around the sun as Party Hounds. We played that a ton in we would play school events all through high school, and that was a song that we played just to kind of put the chaperones at ease. To say, hey, we speak your language too, and we will dabble in it from time to time. You got to consider everybody out there, even the chaperones.
The Party Hounds, making the generations feel good.
The Chaperones, that's a good name for a band.
That is not bad. Although, I'm sure they would be boring. Every chaperone I ever knew was boring.
Because you've never chaperoned.
Never.
Yeah.
No, last thing I'd ever think of doing is helping in that regard.
The Boston Celtics are the champions. Lessons that Jazz fans should absorb and apply to the rebuild here.
Well, it was quite a journey, and I think there were a lot of things along the way that put the Celtics, in that position last night. But the bottom line is, I think they put a team together, piece by piece, different ways that, at the end of the day, were very, very astute basketball-wise. But at the same time, I think we saw during the celebrations, always one of my favorite things, you see and hear, thoughts, and they're thoughts that are pretty unfiltered because, I think you saw it with Jason Tatum last night. The shock was evident. But along the way, the Jaylen Brown pick, the move that Ainge made that will always be historic, understanding that Philly was not interested in taking Tatum, trading, down, still getting Tatum. That was a big move. But I think you look at it, it was just little transactions and acquisitions along the way. I mean, the Porzingis thing looks crazy right now, but it came across the wire and everybody was like, man, what are the Celtics doing? I think that probably the story above all else is that this thing does take time. It's not easy. But we're going into another acquisition window for the Jazz here with the draft coming up. And pay attention, pay attention to who's taken. I know that, in talking to Ainge through the years, he gets a really good feel on a handful of guys. And if he can make trades to move, to find, to get, that's what it's all about. So we're on the front end of that journey, but, the Celtics have been at this for a long time, had not won since, was it 2008? So it's been quite a journey in a place that loves championships. Have the most now of any NBA franchise. But I guess it's piece by piece. That's the lesson.
Did they win one when you were back there?
They did not.
Okay.
I was there about the time that Bird was laying on the floor when he'd come out of games.
Okay.
You remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Most definitely.
Lay at the end of the bench.
Yeah.
But I did see him go for 40 one night in the Garden, so that will always be a cool memory.
How much do you love a kid like Drew Holiday?
Absolutely love him. He to me, he's what makes that team. They had to make a really big decision last year. They had to move off one of their foundational pieces in Marcus Smart. It was difficult for everybody involved. But, what it did was free up a spot to bring in a guy like Holiday. And, the one thing he understands above all else is who he is. And he's not trying to do too much. He's an absolute menace on the defensive side. So I thought, to me, he was the linchpin. I think he was the final straw. They had tried so hard to make it work with Smart, and he got him to a certain point. But, I thought it was gutsy, and really sometimes you got to make those types of moves. But that was a very, very important one because I don't think they win without him.
No, I agree.
We put so much emphasis on scoring, as well we should. And I know you can get all technical and break it down to points per possession, but it really caught my eye that every Celtic starter had 8 rebounds. And the more rebounds you get, the more possessions you have. And the whole points per possession, I get it, but never underestimate the value of having more possessions. They crushed Dallas on the offensive glass. They crushed them on the defensive glass. It doesn't matter if you're a big guy or a little guy. There's plenty of long rebounds off missed threes to run down. There's still rebounds to get that are contested right at the front of the rim. You still need to rebound you're out of your area, maybe more than ever. And to have all 5 starters have at least 8 boards, that just seems like a winning formula that every team should be chasing every game.
Yeah, there was a great amount of effort. It was on the heels of the game in Dallas. I had so many people ask me, like, what happened? And I honestly believe human nature is real. They were up 3-0. Mm-hmm. They'd gotten at least a sweep, and I think on their minds it was let's get home and win in front of our fans. I thought the effort was supreme, and again, it's a pretty unique formula to be able to get guys to play that hard and do that. But with the length, the physicality, I think there's a lot of you can take from the Celtics in that regard. They were definitely toward the end there on both ends. They were just clicking. The ball was moving great. One of the things that they fought during the year was stagnancy on the offensive side from time to time, where they got too ISO happy. But when guys would just make a basketball play, see how the defense, to come to the ball, just move it quickly. You saw the number of extras and corner threes. But that coupled with the effort, supreme effort, you talked about it on the glass, but, contesting shots, getting out in passing lanes, making guys back cut, all those things, are a recipe to win. But I'm with you. Rebounding is a huge part of the game. And, some teams leave it to their big guys, but I love the fact that everybody, the Celtics, as a gang, they got involved and rebounded that basketball.
We all know about the Jason Tatum move that Mr. Ainge made, and it was just absolutely brilliant, right? But in order for him to make that move, there's got to be stupidity on behalf of other managers in his position. And I called up the draft, which was 2017. Philly takes Markelle Fultz as number 1. WTF. And I think Ainge knew that the Lakers were in love with Lonzo Ball. And I'll give him somewhat of a pass because of the injuries, although he's been traded twice. But then Jason Tatum goes 3rd. And then the Suns take Josh Jackson at 4th. So I can argue 3 of the first 4 picks sucked.
Do you really have to argue?
Well, Lonzo Ball.
Can you dumb that down just a little bit?
How can that possibly be? These people who are being paid all this money to do this and spend not so much the money, but spend all this time researching and analyzing, and Markelle Fultz number 1 and Josh Jackson number 4. You have got to be kidding me. And that's the same draft that Markkanen went 7th. Nick Kalina, the Knicks, taking him 8th. And Donovan Mitchell doesn't go till 13th. Bam Adebayo goes 14th. Behind guys like Dennis Smith, Frank Ntilikina, Zach Collins, Luke Kennard. Come on.
Yeah, it is baffling, but I'm telling you, Jake and I got locked into this. We have a lot of time in that studio.
Yes.
82 games, randomly probably 7 hours altogether. It's kind of like a full-time job at night. And so we end up talking a lot about things, and that was one thing we got locked on this year was at times the ineptitude of drafts. And you hear often that, it's a down draft and that, you're not going to get the level of talent. I do believe that the essence of the draft, and I've been a huge fan forever, is kind of getting out of the groupthink. These guys start getting put into positions by pundits and people around the league, a year before. And it's almost like the top 20 in college football. I mean, nobody's really done anything yet. They get locked into positions, and you'll see guys slide. But I think the essence of it is really understanding who these guys are, as people. I had a interaction at one point with Danny, and I talked to him about Tatum and how he knew that he was the guy in that, in that situation.
What did he say?
Because I was out recruiting, and Markelle Fultz was a phenom. Like, I was out that summer before, and everybody was saying, that this kid's going to be number 1. And so I asked Danny about it one day, and he said, you have to immerse yourself in these guys. I think it's often why you see Danny at grassroots events. Start to watch these guys really young and watch the people around them and watch the way they interact with their teammates. And, watch all the things in between the cuts of tape. Because everybody, you can talk yourself into loving somebody, on the basketball court. But I think, why the Celtics are good, you guys mentioned Drew Holiday, there has to be an adult in the room that says, look, we can't all be number 1s. We've got to be able to structure this thing. And so character obviously is a huge part of this thing. But understanding who these guys are as players, it's not an exact science. And I think if you look through the draft, you'll find what you said, PK, more often than not. I mean, people will always hit, for the most part, at top of drafts when it's just easy. But putting teams together, finding the right guy, so hard and so easy, 10 years later or whatever, to look back and go, man, what a bunch of idiots. But the bottom line is the data and everything's out there to search. But there is just, when you're going through 50, 60, 70, 80 guys, and pinpointing your guy, you just really have to have an understanding of what you want.
In an era when there's so much data and there's so many numbers and people are creating new numbers and making them numbers and abbreviations I can't ever hear of, there are still inefficiencies in the system that amaze me, and I find them so frustrating. And the Celtics have conquered one of them with Pritchard taking shots against the buzzer at the end of the quarter. The number of times that you watch the end of a quarter and a guy lets a 50-footer go 1 second after the buzzer so that it doesn't wreck his shooting percentage. Well, why don't they just sort those out? And this doesn't really affect his shooting percentage because we know he's taking low percentage shots at the end of a quarter. But the boost you get from the points, from igniting the crowd or quieting the crowd, Pritchard hit 1 against Cleveland. He hit 2 long buzzer beaters in the finals. And in the video, he's done it so many times in practice and games now, and regular season games we ignored, that in the video, when they pan and follow the ball as he hits the shot at the end of the half, the bench is up and dancing. They're already anticipating it going in because he had so much space when he launched it. Why don't other teams looking for an edge take advantage of that?
It's one of those silly things. I've always kind of thought, and it goes way back. I mean, I had a guy I knew who was trying to, this was back in the 80s, but he's in high school and he's worried about his shooting percentage back then. So he'd get the ball at the end of the half and wouldn't shoot those types of shots. And I think it just became a thing. But there's a lot of things like that, that are self-centered. They're not team-oriented. And, I think you bring up Pritchard and his contribution. I mean, Pritchard's a guy who I remember he was not slotted to go as high as he went. But again, Ainge saw a guy who could be a great piece, right?
Yeah.
And he jumped up and got him, and everybody's scratching their head. But he's not the guy. He's not even the guy, but he's a guy, and he's a guy on that bench that just wants to win. To your point, I think the more you can make basketball less about an individual and their stats, and you can make it about a team, that's when you're getting closer. When it moves off, one guy worrying about shooting the ball, it's going to affect this or that, and you just play the game. I mean, I think that in its truest form, what it's all about.
When we come back, what is trending? The headlines are coming up next. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone.